Well, I guess we're doing this raw. If that's a saying in podcast land, I'm literally just talking into my phone, like phone. It's Sunday morning, real early, and I've got a small window of opportunity to get this episode done. And I've spent the last 20 minutes struggle effing my audio through the phone, through the computer, through everything. I think it's about time we strip this podcast and just rebuild it up from scratch, which is probably going to take some financial investment on my end. But I'm just literally 20 minutes on audio baloney. Good morning. Thanks for listening. It's Sunday. Got lots to do today, which is why I'm up early trying to get this done. But I think this is a pretty good idea for a show. No really updates. Business as usual at my house. Spent the day yesterday watching some college softball. And then I went to the mall with my family, which on a Saturday. I ain't gonna lie. Not my favorite place to be. It was somewhat uncomfortable. To the point where I was gonna fake a medical emergency just so I could have an ambulance take me somewhere else. But I didn't. I did talk my son into. I didn't really talk him into it. I think this story's funny. My wife's not real thrilled. She played along, but I was outside of the dressing room at Target after going to the mall, and I text my kid and I was like, "Hey, listen, I need you to call mom and tell her that somebody hit the dog with their car, so we can get out of here." Next thing I know is my wife's phone rings, and I hear her say, "Hey." I hear her say, "Well, did they stop? Are they still there?" Okay. Did you call 911? And I was like, shit, this is happening. And I said, oh my God, what seems to be the problem? She says, well, Kale just called and said somebody hit our batting cage with their car and they're still there. And I was like, well, sounds like we ought to go home right now. But then she wanted to make a bunch of other phone calls. And I was like, listen, I can't let you do this. I put him up to that. But good on that kid for playing along and helping old dad out. But we stayed at Target, tried on some clothes, and then came home. Lots to do today, so let's get going. My birthday month. So every month on my birthday, I have labs drawn or I have a wellness check. Okay, so I get a metabolic panel done. Been doing this for years. I got interested in this 10 or 15 years ago, I think, because my EMS service put on a wellness program where a couple days a year, all of the city workers were able to go down to City Hall and see a wellness person and get your labs drawn and kind of get some information about yourself. And I think it's a great idea. I hope that more EMS services do it, fire services, police services, all that. It's just a good investment in your employee, for one. And number two, it really kind of opens for free, mind you, so it's at no cost to somebody's health insurance plan or deductible or anything like that. Just a good investment in your employee, and it's good information, right? Like the more you know about yourself, the more you can help yourself. I'm a big believer in not being a customer in the healthcare system for anything, unless, accidents do happen. So acute injury and illness, I think we do a great job. But being a chronic supporter of the healthcare system is not somebody I want to be ever in the history of my life. I just reposted a reel from a congressional hearing, which I thought was great, by the founder of Ways to Well, and basically listen to the whole thing. It's eye opening about the business of healthcare, and I'm just not interested in supporting their business. That being said, my opinions are my opinions. They're not my employer's opinions. They're not necessarily my family's opinions. These are my opinions by myself, and they come from, I think, a good place where I've done my own investigation into things, and I'm not research. I've never done any research. Like, I've never been in a lab and I've done it. So when people say, well, I've done the research and it says that no, I doubt you really did research. You may have did some investigation. What you probably did was see a headline and then read the first 2 lines and go on that. But I digress. I've never done any research, any lab value research. What I have done is what I call investigation. I've read some things, looked up some things. I've then pitted that against my own personal experience to come up with conclusions. That's what I've done. As a reasonable human being, I've come up with my own conclusions. And I understand that it differs somewhat greatly from some of my friends, but also aligned with some of my friends. And that's just the nature of life. I'm not trying to convince you to not believe what you believe if you've done your own investigation. I'm just trying to let you know where I come from and why I come from them. And I think that, in all honesty, COVID should have really opened our eyes to the fact that there's just some weird shit going on in healthcare. Because you can't tell me that one doctor sitting there without a mask, and then one doctor sitting right next to that person with a mask, with two terribly different ideas and theories and practices, that there wasn't some information. Like, we all were privileged to the same information, but some people went down this road, some people went down this road. And I've always been interested in why that is, right? Like, you have a medical director on an EMS service that loves ketamine, and so you give a bunch of ketamine, and then you walk into a hospital, and a physician goes, "Why'd you give so much ketamine?" "I hate ketamine. Ketamine's stupid." Okay, see, since the dawn of time, because medicine's a practice, everybody's allowed to come up with their own ideas on the information, except for us. And then they pass that information on to us, and we're just supposed to be like, "Okay, I guess I'll put a mask on and I'll do all kinds of stuff," without thinking for yourself. So think for yourself. Try not to be a customer in the business of healthcare, and just ask questions. That's all I'm saying. This is not a anti anything. This is just be your own advocate for your healthcare. And if you can't be your own advocate, find somebody who can, and just ask them some really good questions. That being said, I'm going to move quickly, probably through some of this stuff, because it's I'm going to compare my metabolic plan from 2023 to 2024. We'll look at what has changed and what hasn't. A lot of this stuff doesn't change. Like, a lot of your electrolyte stuff, it's got a small window of what is considered normal range. Your body does a really good job of fluctuating that a little bit to keep your body in homeostasis, and very little influences that. But there are some big ones where I've seen reductions and I've seen increases that certainly could to lead you to believe that there's some trending going on, and that some things that you want to look out for. Again, if I say that it's within normal range, please don't mistake that for optimal, because normal is not optimal. And I'll give you a good example. I had my testosterone checked several years ago. It was 790 something, which is, I was very happy with, for a guy in his late 40s. Now, the range on testosterone is so big. I think it's like 300 to 900 or something like that. And look it up. I may be wrong. But sorry, I was looking at my phone to see if we were still recording. We are. So, but you can't tell me a guy with a testosterone of 400 is the same guy as a guy with testosterone of 850. So just because it's normal doesn't mean it's optimal. Ask some questions. Do your research. All right, here it is. So I'm going to start with the basics, and then I'm going to go to the additional stuff that I had pulled based off my own investigation. There was some information that I wanted about me, and so I had them pull some of it. Your insurance may not cover. You just have to be okay with that. They're going to give you the speech, "Oh, I can't pull that." Some of the labs may get done at your local lab, but if you ask for additional stuff, may have to get sent off to Mayo, or you just have to wait a few extra days. So this is with a 12-hour fast. So the statistics, 49 years old, 5'11", 100 and let's say 90 pounds, I'll round up, depending on the day. No medical history. We'll talk about prescription medicines in a little bit. And then we're also at the end of this, I'm going to talk about the supplements that I take every day, which isn't many, and nor it should be. You shouldn't take a bunch of supplements. So let's start with glucose. That's the big one. That's how much sugar's going through your body. At one time, my fasting glucose is 103. And that's milligrams per deciliter. Deciliter is a tenth of a liter of blood. So that's how much my fasting glucose was at the point of care. Now, what they also pulled was a hemoglobin A1C, which is the percentage of my hemoglobin that has glucose on it. And then average it, and then that percentage leads to an average glucose over the last couple months. So my hemoglobin A1C, so how much glucose was in my hemoglobin, or was bound to hemoglobin, was 5.6%. Last year it was 5.5. Now, the upper limit for that is 5.6. So, what does that mean? I don't know, but I'm always a little sketchy. And this is one of the controversial ones. Like most 98% of these labs are not controversial. Like you cannot argue your sodium levels. You're either dehydrated or not, right? You can't argue potassium levels. You either need it in that range or you don't, right? But I can argue two things. And one is hemoglobin A1C, as far as what constitutes the upper range in needing a treatment. And I can also argue low density lipoproteins or LDL cholesterol. I'm going to do both because that's what I do. I'm not convinced that hemoglobin A1C of 5.7 or 5.6. I have a sweet tooth. I get it. I chew on lifesavers that are full of sugar at work, be out of boredom. I get it. I'm trying to cut that out. But when they mess with upper limits, I think me being the cynical person that I am, I think sometimes it's an opportunity to sell more prescription medicines. That's my first go-to, right? Type 2 diabetes, I feel like we totally invented in America. I feel like we found a way to make money on obesity and high fasting blood sugars. And so we can sell diabetic medication to people whose pancreases still work. It's just they eat too much shit and they have too much serum glucose in their blood. And so then they say, oh, I can fix that with a pill. Okay. That shit annoys me. And I really think I don't think we can debate it. But it's really hard for me not to be on my side of, I think big pharma and big insurance is making money on type 2 diabetes. So, do they recommend treatment for a hemoglobin A1C of 5.7? No, but it's getting up there, and so I don't know whether or not to. My grandpa was type 1 diabetic, so it's not like I'm unfamiliar with diabetes. One of my super good friends is type 1 diabetic, so it's not, but that doesn't make me an expert in diabetes at all. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I have more questions about the hemoglobin A1C. There was never a phone call follow up that says, "Oh, hey, shit, man, your blood sugar is too high. We need to start you on metformin or whatever." But to me, it was just kind of annoying. Like it's just annoying. Now, I'm going to try to eliminate a couple things I have on a habitual level and see if that helps me next year. Because again, I'm not interested in having a prescription medicine. All right, let's move off that. I could go into the weeds, and maybe that should be an episode in itself on those two things. And maybe we will. Sodium, my sodium is 138. That's met equivalents per liter. So a met equivalence is 1/1000th of an equivalent. That doesn't mean anything to you, maybe to the science nerds. Your brain's real sensitive to this electrolyte. Sodium is salt. Normal ranges are 135 to 145, so there's a very narrow window. Too low and you start to see problems. So if you use up all your sodium stores, so think of like a marathoner, they get to the end of the line, a very low sodium can cause seizures, like your brain is real sensitive to it. And then, a high concentration of sodium could lead to dehydration and some other problems. So sodium is salt. I put salt on all my food. Here's why: because it helps with hydration. It helps pull fluid that's hanging out of the cell into the cell and hydrates that cell. Hydrated cells work better. Salt is not the enemy. I know people will tell you stay away from salt, and that's not true. It is true, however, if you have kidney problems. So if you can't excrete that salt, normally, if you don't have normal kidney function, then sure, stay away from salt because that could increase your blood pressure and make you swell up like a tick. And nobody's got time for that. But if you're a normal, healthy human with good kidney function, put salt on your food, man. It's not the devil that they've made it out to be. Either eggs. We'll talk about that later too. Let's move on to potassium. Potassium is essential electrolyte. This will narrow window here, so 3.4 to 5. Used to be 3.5 to 5.5. Now it's 3.4 to 5. Mine's 4.2. We're right in there. It's essential for heart function. So too low, and you get irregular heartbeats. Too high, and it can throw you into a fatal dysrhythmia. If it's found to be too high, you probably have other chronic problems. Like it's not just isolated to high potassium, but you're going to get a whole cocktail of medicines to try to get that potassium back in the cell where it's supposed to be, and that's important for muscle contraction and muscle function. Next is chloride. Mine is 104. That's a med equivalent. Nothing to be said real there, other than it's just essential for pH balance in your blood. Your blood can't be too acidic, can't be too alkalytic. There's a fine range there, 7.3, 7.45. High chloride could indicate dehydration. Again, you're fasting when you take this, so if you're not drinking water, if you're not putting salt on your food, this could elevate chloride. CO2 is just a waste product. It's a byproduct of energy, respiration, oxygenation, all that kind of stuff. Nothing here. You may be high chronically if you have asthma, COPD, and where you retain CO2, where your alveoli can't exchange it. If you're perfectly healthy with no lung disease, 20 to 30 is the normal range. That's a med equivalent as well. No real fluctuation from year to year on that. 27 last year versus 29 this year. Anion gap, that's an interesting one. It's the difference between the positive electrolytes and the negative electrolytes in your body. And again, that's just to help with the acidity level of your blood. Big range here, 4 to 14, mine's 5. Calcium, we all know what calcium does, build strong bones. That's why you should drink whole milk. Whole milk is better than, this is my opinion, whole milk is better than any other milk because it's got all the fat in it. That's all we drink at my house is whole milk, and it's delicious. Happy to debate that with anybody too. Just a fun little debate. Ford or Chevy, 2% whole milk doesn't make a difference. Mine's 9.9. Range is 8.5 to 10. Nothing big there. It is the most abundant mineral in the body, and it helps with muscle contraction and bone density. The BUN, the BUN, blood urea nitrogen. Okay. This is the waste products from your kidneys. So it tells you how well your kidneys are functioning and how they're breaking down proteins. Okay. So mine's 19. Last year was 24. Range is 6 to 25. Big range. An abnormality could tell you potentially leading towards some sort of kidney dysfunction, kidney disease. The creatinine, same deal. Waste product from muscle breakdown. So you'll get normal muscle breakdown after you work out. It's creatinine is just a measure. So this is in milligrams per deciliter as well. How well your kidneys are removing that waste product. So 0.76 is my level, and we're talking a range of 0.5 to 1.2. All kidneys are functioning fine. Drink water. Make your kidneys work. That's what they do. There's some liver enzymes that you want to take a look at. So, like your ALT, I'm not going to tell you what it stands for because I can't pronounce half that. But it's an enzyme to assess liver health, which is kind of an underutilized lab. Mine was 46 this year, and this is measured in international units, which I think an international unit is just. I think it's an arbitrary number that a bunch of people came up with. Maybe I'm not really sure. Mine's 46. Last year was 36. The range is 5 to 55. So elevation could, is an indication of an unhealthy liver, fatty liver disease. So these are the people I'm talking about are like the mid 40s, got the beer belly, the real firm beer belly. Have 2 or 3 beers a night before they go to bed. Probably running around with elevated ALT, which fatty liver disease is not helpful for your metabolic health in a plethora of ways. It's not something that you want to do. So when we talk about the beer belly, we're talking about visceral fat. We're talking about the fat that's packed in between your organs, so around your liver, around your pancreas. This is the not to be confused with subcutaneous fat, which is the flabby fat, the fat that you can grab with your hands and pinch, or the people with the pannus. The beer belly is like the firm, rock hard belly, but it's rotund. It's off-putting a little bit, I think. But these are the people that got the fat packed in between their organs, and that's real bad for metabolic health as you get older. Matter of fact, it's a risk factor for poor metabolic health as you get older. Let's move on to AST is another indicator of liver disease and pancreatic dysfunction. Mine's 36. It's measured in international units as well. Big range there, 5 to 45. Not a lot of change from year to year, so 36, 35. Bilirubin, I think most of us kind of know what that is. That's a byproduct of your liver. When your liver breaks down red blood cells, so like if you had a newborn and they looked a little jaundiced, which is the yellow tinted skin, that's what that means. You'd be elevated probably in if you were a chronic alcoholic, when you'd see the white of your eyes is yellow. That's jaundice. Liver failure indication. Moderate range, 0.2 to 1.5, minus 0.7. Total protein, mine's 7.4. This is grams per deciliter. 7.1 last year. Moderate range, 5.7, 8.2. Just what it says is the total albumin and globulin, which is those are both proteins. They use it to diagnose liver and kidney disease as well. Albumin is a protein. They'll measure that separately as well. My level was 4.6. That's grams per deciliter. Small range, 3.5 to 4. Nothing to see here. Basically, is what I'm saying through all this. Nothing to see here. The EGFR is basically like how well your kidneys filter waste from your blood, and that's measured in. I gotta think here. I don't know. I want to say NL, which is like nanograms per ml, but I don't really know that for sure. So let's just move on. But anyway, mine is 110. Normal range is greater than 90. So, all right, let's. I'm going to get into the lipid panel here, which is probably going to take the bulk of the more bulk of this conversation. So let's talk about TSH real quick, which is thyroid stimulating hormone. This is your hyperthyroid syndrome. I think it was an add-on. I'm not sure. 0.88. and that's measured in micro international units per liter, which is weird. And I think an international unit is just like an arbitrary number that a bunch of scientists came up with and said, yeah, this sounds good. And I'm sure for reasonable purposes. Big range, 0.5 to 4.7. Now, again, I'll say this again, normal does not necessarily mean high. But vitamin B12, I had pulled just, actually, my physician asked to pull that one. And that's an essential vitamin you need to make red blood cells. Mine's 762. I didn't pull a normal range for that one, but that's measured in picograms per ml, which I don't know if you know what that is, but that's 1/1,000,000th of a gram. There's some knowledge. C-reactive protein, I'm going to talk about that for a second. So that measures the amount of inflammation in your body. Obviously, with the more inflammation, the harder your body has to work to manage itself. Mine is 0.4. Didn't pull a normal number on that deal either, but that's milligrams per liter, I think. But doing well. Like there's almost no inflammation. So that number up there could indicate a whole, like just basically spark an investigation on why you have so much inflammation in your body. It could be a lot of different things. So vitamin D, that was interesting to me. I had that pulled I started taking a vitamin D supplement during COVID. And the reason I did is because there seemed to be a lot of, again, in my own investigation, things coming out that the people that were getting COVID to a severe degree were one thing they had in common is they were vitamin D deficient. Okay, so how do you get vitamin D? Well, it's hard to get it through your food. It's real hard. Mostly we get it through sunlight exposure, through your skin. So when you slather yourself up with suntan or sunscreen, it's really hard for the sun to penetrate. I'm not advocating skin cancer for shit's sakes. I'm just saying it makes it real hard. So I started taking a vitamin D supplement even before I knew what my values were, because I just assumed I was probably one of those people that were deficient. Not because I came down with COVID, but just because it made sense to me to think that, especially during Iowa winters when the sun is farther from the earth. So my level there was 65, and that's measured in, I think, nanograms per milliliter. And so the normal range is 30 through 100 to 100. So think about that for a second. That's a big range. I think that the optimal level, from what I understand, is about 75. So I'm even short on that deal. So I take one vitamin D supplement pill a day, and then obviously try to see the sun as much as I can. Also drink whole milk, which is a source of vitamin D. I eat red meat. I know, all taboo things, man. I don't know how I don't know how you're alive, Jason. I know. We'll talk about that in a second with my cholesterol. So that's a cool one. That's a good one to know your levels. I'm going to look here and make sure I don't have any other. All right, so that's really it for your basic metabolic panel. Now we're going to talk about my lipid panel and why that's controversial. So I got real interested in. So back in the day when we used to have our wellness programs through the city, like I would say even 20 years ago when I was getting certified as a personal trainer, I think what they were really advocating at the time to increase your HDLs, which is your high density lipoproteins. So they would say, like, if you don't have a certain level, you're at risk for coronary disease. Okay, so I remember when I first started getting labs pulled, I was terrible at my HDLs. Like they were in the low 40s, maybe high 38s, which back then was a huge risk, allegedly. So what's the fix? Well, the fix is fish oils, salmon, fatty fishes, things like that, with omega-3s, omega-6s, omega-9s. So I started taking a omega-3 fatty acid supplement with that, and I think doing well. So if we start at the top with where we're at now at 49, total cholesterol is 201. My HDLs now are 56, right in the high 50s, which is the normal range or the optimal range, I guess. Now let's just say normal, because I really don't know what optimal is when it comes to this. 40 to 59. So I'm in the zone. If you look at triglycerides, 47 this year versus 55 last year. It's off, still in the normal range. It's a fat. You'll spike that after you eat. That'll be a big spike, so that's why they take it fasting. Triglycerides are fat. Things around in your blood. You want to be less than 150, 0 to 150, and that's in milligrams per deciliter. So those two numbers, really good. Okay, so now we're going to get into the LDLs. So the LDLs are the low-density lipoproteins, like plain to clog your coronary arteries and kill you dead. And I'm not so sure that that's true. I'm not sold on it. I'm not sold. They want you below 100. I've been anywhere from 115 to 170 to 130. And so this sparked a conversation with my primary care provider about getting started on a statin. You're going to have to hang tight for this, man, because I'm going to get into some stuff. I'm not a fan of statins for a lot of reasons. I just don't number one, it's the number one prescribed medication in the world. Okay. Manufactured by a company whose sole job is to make money. And I get that people will argue with me and say, but the research shows, Jason. Yeah, well, the research, a lot of that is also funded by the people making the money, right? It's not an independent research company doing the research. It's usually the company that produces the medication. And so that part of it sours me. So I did a little investigation and read some books, and I think what the real culprit is a lipoprotein called ApoB. And I think that is a lipoprotein that LDLs bind to, and that gets across the epithelial lining of the coronary arteries, and that's what clogs your system. So I don't think it's LDLs. I don't think LDLs are necessary. Like, your body makes LDLs. Why would your body make something that can kill you? I don't know. We're an exceptional machine. We're built to thrive. I can't think that this is one of those cases. Now, what's also interesting is that you need LDLs in your brain, right? And it has been shown that people who are at risk or have been diagnosed with dementia or Alzheimer's have real low LDLs. And they were on a statin. Weird, right? I know. I'm just telling you what I know. You guys figure it out for yourself. You take a statin if you want to. I can give two shits. I'm not sold. So anyway, I'm having this conversation with my physician, and she's like, hey, listen, why would you come to me and have all this work done if you're not going to listen to my medical advice? And I was like, hey, that's a good point, man. Very good point. I said, I will try a statin on the premise that I'm not doing it to lower my LDLs, but I'm going to do it to lower my ApoB. And so my ApoB in 2023 was 119, which was right on the threshold of what was considered high. And so with that bit of information, and I think normal was like 55 to, I wrote that wrong because I know 119 was on the level of high. Now, I said, so what I'll do, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll try it. So I was open-minded. I was trying to be open-minded, and I'll say, listen, I'll try it. We'll try a 5 milligram dose. I'm going to take it at night so I don't have all that bullshit, hand cramps, muscle cramps, brain fog, all the bullshit that comes with it, all of which is worse than having a slightly elevated LDL, mind you. But I'm going to do it for my ApoB because I believe that the ApoB is the reason why. And it's never checked. You have to ask for it. It's not on. So let's talk about that for a second. You're not going to know what your ApoB is unless you ask for it. They just don't do it. It just hasn't caught on yet. Matter of fact, this lab poll had to be sent to mail because around here they're just not doing it. So you have to know. You have to know what you don't know. And so I did it for, which is another interesting thing that I was getting a month supply at my local pharmacy for like $2, and then my employer said, "Hey, listen, you can't do that. You have to go to one of our pharmacies, and you have to get a 90-day supply for $25." Oh, okay. Does that make sense to anybody? No. It's just, again, fishy. Ask some questions. Dig a little deeper. Why do I got to spend more for more? That's You're doing it so somebody else can make money. That's the bottom line. So I tried it. I did it. We did a repeat 6 weeks later, and my ApoB was down from 119 to 82. So did it work? Yes. Started taking it every other day, and then kind of got off it for a little bit. And then, 2023 was coming up, or 2024 was coming up. So I started taking the ApoB or the statin again to make sure that my LDLs were low enough that they didn't hassle me about my LDLs. And still only down to 112 or whatever, which I think is fine. Like, I'm pretty sold. And so I kind of take the statin willy-nilly, basically is what I'm saying. It's totally against medical advice. It's just in my mind to keep my ApoBs down. Like, I really don't care that I have LDLs of 130. I really don't. It seems reasonable. I remember when the metric used to be like you would want to keep it below 160, right? And so it's hard for me to believe that the researchers showed that you have a decrease in coronary artery disease death if your LDLs is less than 100, when 20 years ago it was less than 160. Like, it's hard to think that they're not changing the goalpost to make more money. That's just my dad, and I'll give you a good example. My dad was a good example of this. Like, he had triple bypass when he was 43. Did everything the doctors told him to. Don't eat bacon. Go for walks. He was a slender guy anyway. He was never obese. Ate fish. Never had a burger. Took his statin. God damn it, did it all right. And then, according to healthcare, now he goes in 1 week and they pull his labs. They're like, "Hey, man, you're doing great. Go ahead and put those retirement papers in." Yeah, everything's fine. A week later, he dropped dead of sudden cardiac death. So I'm not bitter. I'm not mad. I just think he should ask some more questions. Tried to get him to ask some more questions. He was a non-confrontational guy. Wasn't going to do it. Which leads into another lab value that I don't think anybody has pulled, and that's it's called LP little a. So capital L, P, and then little a. And this is a lipoprotein that's indicative of familial hyperlipidemia. So hereditary high cholesterol. I was real interested in this one because I don't think anybody has it checked. And here's the real world application to this. So Bob Harper used to be the Biggest Loser guy, real fit, real active, suffered a V-fib arrest. They think that his LP little a was elevated, which is why he had, like, you look at him and you're like, man, you have no risk factors of dropping dead from a heart attack. But he damn near dropped dead of a heart attack. And they think that's why. So the goal is just to be less than 7. And that's, I think, how is that measured? Nano something, I think. Nanomole per liter, which is 1/1000th of a mole, if you're interested in what a mole is. And mine's less than 7. So I do not have the hereditary hyperlipidemia lipoprotein, which is good news. And for those that do, which I think my dad did, I really think my dad did, but he never had it checked. He never had it pulled. There's nothing you can do, initially, other than to monitor yourself, right? Make sure you're doing the things that you're supposed to do. Don't smoke. That's the biggest one. Don't be overweight. That's number 2. If you have to get prescription medications to manage that, then get your prescription medications, because you're not going to outrun the hereditary gene, which, unfortunately, some people just have, and it's just bad luck. It's a shit lottery ticket. My cousin's husband is going through some of that right now. He just had bypass 3 years ago, I think, and now his bypass is full of clots. So he's got to be on blood thinning medication the rest of his life. There's really nothing they can. Now he's a smoker, was so clearly that not help his cause, but he's also got some familial um, heredity that's not helping him, and he knows that too. So he's a time bomb. I hate it for the kid, but it is what it is. Um, so there it is. Basic metabolic panel. Um, the down and dirty version. If you guys have any questions, miss something, hit me up. Let me know. I'm not an expert. No claim to be. Uh, I I do just think that the more you know about yourself, the better off you are. Um, don't leave it for other people to tell you. Um, do your own investigation. Read some books. Ask some questions. Don't let them tell you that being tired in the middle of the afternoon is just part of getting old. Like, don't. It's not everybody. There are. It's not. It's. I don't think the physicians are the problem. I think the problem is big pharma, big insurance, kind of handcuffing your physicians on what they can order and what they can't, and allowing how much access they can give you to yourself, which I also think is weird. Like, I should be able to walk in any doctor's office and say, "Hey, listen, I'm interested in knowing if I have this or if I have that," and they should say, "Okay, let's find out." Without insurance going, no, you don't need to know. You're only 49 years old. You don't need to know if you have a genotype that is a risk factor for dementia. Because what if you do have it? What are they going to do? Can't fix dementia. It's ridiculous. But knowledge is power, in my opinion. So go get checked. Go get your labs pulled. There are other places to go than conventional family care physicians' offices. If you're interested in that, there's all kinds of wellness and longevity clinics popping up. It's usually cash money, but I think the information is invaluable. Go back and listen to Ashley and I's episode a long time ago about what she does in functional wellness. Big believer in those people. I'm a big believer in traditional healthcare too when it comes to acute and chronic, or not a chronic, acute injury and illness. Like, we do a real good job. We have real good ER physicians. We have real good specialty surgeons. And we do a real good job with, joint replacements, things like that. I don't think we do a good job in helping people manage their longevity. I think there's too much going against us when it comes to industry and complex money schemes and insurance. But I mean, if you need a new hip, we do a real good job of that. So, all right, that's it for today. I need to move on about my day. It's 7:15 already in the morning, and we need to move on to the next thing. But anyway, hope you like this one. Interact with the show in any way you can. Like, subscribe, send to a friend, comment that I'm full of shit. Do whatever you got to do. I'm okay with it. I understand that I may say things that sound averse to what you're used to hearing, but it comes from a good place. It comes from experience. It comes from my interpretation of things, which, again, I've learned is not necessarily the way that other people interpret things, and that's okay. So that's it. Work hard. Be kind. See you later. Hey guys, thanks again for listening to another episode of the Shift Change Podcast. I need to ask if you would leave a rating. I think that it helps people who are new to the podcast find it quicker. It doesn't do me any good, but it does help other people that are looking for the Shift Change Podcast on Spotify or Apple. It just comes up quicker the more ratings that you give it. I don't, whether you give it a 2 or a 5, it doesn't make a difference. It just helps other people. If you need to get a hold of me, contact me via my email, the show email, which is talkshiftchange@gmail.com.
or you can message me on Instagram at talk.shiftchange. Excuse me, at talk.shiftchange on Instagram. As always, thanks for listening. I could not have imagined um, how well this podcast has been received. So, as always, I appreciate it. Work hard, be kind.